Hi, I'm Victoria. My sister cut my wedding dress in half the night before my ceremony, leaving a note saying I didn't deserve happiness because I'd stolen everything she wanted in life. She thought our parents would side with her sob story about sibling rivalry and that I'd quietly accept the sabotage to avoid family drama. But sometimes justice has a way of arriving with federal authority, delivered by a father who happened to be a U.S. District Court judge with zero tolerance for criminal behavior.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you.
What happened next didn't just save my wedding day, it exposed a pattern of destruction that had been escalating for years and showed my sister exactly what happens when you commit felonies against a federal judge's family.
The dress had been perfect. 6 months of searching boutiques in Manhattan, countless fittings, and finally finding the one, a vintage-inspired gown with delicate lace sleeves and a cathedral train that made me feel like a princess. It had cost more than I'd ever spent on anything in my life, but for my wedding to James, nothing felt too extravagant. I was marrying my college sweetheart in just 18 hours at the historic Riverside Country Club in Connecticut, where 3 generations of my family had celebrated their weddings. James and I had been together for 4 years, engaged for 1, and our relationship had the kind of steady, supportive foundation that made everyone around us believe in lasting love. Except my sister, Melissa. Melissa was 2 years older than me and had spent most of our adult lives in what could only be described as active competition with everything I did. When I graduated summa cum laude from Yale Law School, she immediately enrolled in an MBA program claiming she'd always planned to get an advanced degree. When I got engaged, she started dating 3 different men simultaneously, announcing that she was exploring her options before settling down. But it was more than just sibling rivalry. Melissa had a way of turning my achievements into personal attacks against her, as if my happiness somehow diminished her own possibilities. The night before my wedding, I stayed at my childhood home in Greenwich with my parents, Judge Robert Sterling, and my mother, Catherine, a former prosecutor who now worked in corporate law. The house was buzzing with last-minute preparations, flowers being arranged, catering staff setting up for the rehearsal dinner, family members arriving from across the country. I'd hung my wedding dress in my old bedroom, the same room where I'd dreamed about my wedding day since I was little. The dress looked magical against the pale blue walls, catching the afternoon light that streamed through the windows overlooking our garden. Melissa had arrived that morning from her apartment in Boston, where she worked as a marketing coordinator for a tech startup. She'd been unusually quiet during the rehearsal dinner, offering only polite smiles when guests commented on how beautiful the wedding was going to be or how perfect James and I were together. "I'm so happy for you," she had said when she hugged me goodnight, but something in her voice felt hollow, rehearsed. I should have recognized the warning signs, the way she had lingered when everyone else went to bed, the questions she had asked about the wedding dress throughout the week, always framed as sisterly interest, but feeling more like reconnaissance, the comments about how some people just seemed to get everything handed to them that she'd been making for months. But I was too caught up in the joy and anticipation of marrying the man I loved to notice that my sister was planning something that would change our family forever. At 7 a.m. on my wedding day, I walked into my bedroom to begin getting ready, expecting to see my beautiful dress hanging exactly where I had left it. Instead, I found 2 pieces of expensive fabric lying on my bed, cut cleanly down the middle, with a handwritten note tucked between them.
The note was written on Melissa's monogram stationery, her perfect handwriting unmistakable. "You've always gotten everything you wanted while I've had to fight for scraps. The perfect grades, the perfect boyfriend, the perfect life handed to you on a silver platter. You don't deserve this happiness when I'm still alone. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to have something precious destroyed. M." I stood frozen in my bedroom, holding the 2 halves of my $8,000 wedding dress, the reality of what had happened slowly sinking in. The cathedral train that had taken 3 seamstresses weeks to perfect was now 2 separate pieces of fabric. The intricate lacework that had been hand-sewn by artisans in Belgium was destroyed beyond repair. My wedding was in 11 hours. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly shoved the note into my robe pocket just as my mother knocked on the door. "Victoria, darling, breakfast is ready downstairs. The hair and makeup team will be here in an hour." Mom's voice was cheerful, completely unaware that our family was about to implode. "I'll be down in a minute," I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. But before I could figure out how to handle this disaster, Melissa appeared in my doorway, her face perfectly composed in an expression of shock and concern. "Oh my God, Victoria! What happened to your dress?" Her performance was flawless. The gasp, the hand flying to her mouth, the wide-eyed innocence that had gotten her out of trouble our entire childhood. "You know exactly what happened, Melissa." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "What are you talking about? Did something happen during transport? Did the dress bag get caught on something?" The gaslighting was immediate and smooth. "Melissa, I found your note." "What note?" Confusion looked genuine, practiced. "Victoria, you're scaring me. Are you suggesting I did this?" I pulled the note from my pocket and held it up. Her eyes flicked to it for just a moment before she shook her head vigorously. "That's not my handwriting. Someone's trying to frame me." She moved closer, examining the note with what appeared to be genuine bewilderment. "Victoria, this looks like someone copied my writing style, but look at the G in everything. I never make that loop that way." She was good. Really good. If I hadn't lived with her manipulations for 26 years, I might have believed her. "Why would someone frame you?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe someone who's jealous of our family or has a grudge against Dad because of his court cases. You know how many people he's sentenced over the years." Melissa's voice was rising with what sounded like genuine panic. "Victoria, you can't seriously think I would destroy your wedding dress. I'm your maid of honor. I love you." The way she said love made my skin crawl, but her explanation about the handwriting gave me pause. Was it possible someone else had done this? Someone who wanted to tear our family apart by turning us against each other? "We need to call the police," Melissa continued. "This is clearly a crime. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, maybe even stalking if someone's been watching our family closely enough to forge my handwriting." She was spinning a narrative so quickly and convincingly that for a moment I wondered if I was losing my mind. The note was right there in my hands, but she was explaining it away with such detailed reasoning. "Think about it logically," she pressed. "Why would I destroy something I helped you choose? I was there at the boutique when you tried it on. I cried when you said yes to the dress. I've been planning your bachelorette party for months." For just a moment, doubt crept in. But then I looked at her eyes and saw the same cold satisfaction I'd noticed yesterday when guests complimented the wedding preparations. She was enjoying this.
Within an hour, Melissa had transformed our family crisis into her personal stage for martyrdom. She called our parents upstairs with tears streaming down her face, positioning herself as the devastated sister trying to help solve a terrible mystery. "Someone broke into our house and destroyed Victoria's dress," she announced to Mom and Dad, her voice breaking with perfectly timed emotion. "They left a note, trying to make it look like I did it, but the handwriting is all wrong." Dad, in his judicial robes because he was officiating another wedding that morning before ours, examined the note with the analytical eye that had made him one of the most respected federal judges in Connecticut. "This is clearly an attempt to frame Melissa," he said after studying the paper. "Look at the pen pressure here, and the way the letters slant. It's similar to Melissa's writing, but not identical. Someone's been practicing." Mom was already on the phone with our security company, demanding to know how someone could have entered our home without triggering alarms. Melissa stood beside her, offering suggestions about checking the guest list for suspicious attendees and reviewing anyone who might have grudges against our family.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"We should call off the wedding," Melissa said quietly, her hand on my shoulder in a gesture of sisterly support. "Victoria, I know this is devastating, but we can't let whoever did this win by forcing you to get married in a damaged dress or some last-minute replacement." The suggestion was delivered with such apparent concern.
But I caught the flash of satisfaction in her eyes when she mentioned calling off the wedding. "We're not calling off anything," I said firmly. "I'll find another dress." "Where?" Melissa asked, spreading her hands helplessly. "Everything in your size at the good boutiques was booked months ago. And even if we found something, it wouldn't be the same. This was supposed to be your perfect day." She was systematically destroying my options while appearing to help brainstorm solutions. Mom hung up the phone, her face pale. "The security system shows no breaches overnight. No doors or windows were opened after we all went to bed." "That's impossible," Melissa said quickly. "Maybe the system malfunctioned? Or maybe whoever did this is someone who knows our security codes." "Who knows our codes?" asked Dad. "The catering staff, the florists, the cleaning service. Any of them could have given the information to someone with a grudge against our family." But I was remembering something. "Melissa, didn't you go downstairs around midnight for water? I heard footsteps in the hallway." "Yes, but I went straight to the kitchen and back. I didn't go near your room." Her answer came too quickly, too defensive. "The kitchen is right below my bedroom. You would have walked past my door." I used the back stairs. I didn't want to wake anyone." Mom was frowning now. "Melissa, honey, why would you use the back stairs? That's a much longer route from your room to the kitchen." I wasn't thinking clearly. I was half asleep." Dad's judicial training was kicking in. "Let's think about this logically. Who had access to the house, opportunity to enter Victoria's room, and knowledge of Melissa's handwriting well enough to forge it?" The question hung in the air as we all looked at each other. The answer was becoming uncomfortably obvious, but no one wanted to say it out loud. "Maybe we should check if anything else was disturbed?" Mom suggested. "If someone was in the house, there might be other evidence." "Good idea," Melissa agreed quickly. "Let's search the whole house. I'm sure we'll find signs of an intruder." But as we spread out to search, I noticed that Melissa kept steering the conversation away from evidence and toward emotional appeals about family unity and not letting outsiders destroy our relationships. She was working overtime to control the narrative, and I was starting to see the pattern.
The humiliation reached its peak when guests began arriving for the ceremony. Word had spread quickly through our social circle about the mysterious attack on our family, and everyone wanted to offer support while secretly craving details about the drama. James arrived at the house 3 hours before the wedding, breaking tradition because of the crisis. When he saw the destroyed dress, his face went white with shock and anger. "Who would do something like this?" he asked, holding me as I finally let myself cry. "That's what we're trying to figure out," Melissa said, appearing in the doorway with red-rimmed eyes and a handful of tissues. "Someone really wanted to hurt our family." James looked at her with sympathy. "Melissa, I'm so sorry you're going through this too. Having someone try to frame you must be devastating." "I just keep thinking about how this was supposed to be Victoria's perfect day," Melissa said, her voice breaking. "Whoever did this succeeded in destroying something beautiful." She was performing grief while simultaneously ensuring that James heard her version of events first. As the afternoon wore on, more family members and friends arrived to offer support. Melissa had somehow transformed herself into the central figure of sympathy, bravely holding our family together while under attack from mysterious enemies. "I can't believe someone would target Melissa," I heard our Aunt Patricia whisper to another relative. "She's always been such a sweet girl. This must be connected to Robert's court cases. Those criminals have long memories. They probably researched the family and decided to strike when it would cause maximum damage." By the time the caterers arrived to set up for the reception, everyone was treating Melissa like a victim of circumstances, rather than questioning her role in what happened. She fielded condolences with the perfect mixture of brave resilience and vulnerable pain. The final blow came when Mrs. Henderson, our longtime family friend and social columnist for the Greenwich Times, pulled me aside with barely concealed excitement about covering the story. "Victoria, darling, this is such a unique situation. A federal judge's family targeted by criminals trying to disrupt a wedding. It's like something out of a movie. Would you mind if I wrote a small piece about the incident? Nothing sensational, just highlighting how crime affects even the most prominent families." "I'd rather keep this private, Mrs. Henderson." "Of course, dear, but you know how these stories spread anyway. Better to have accurate reporting than wild speculation." She leaned closer. "Between you and me, I think this was clearly aimed at your father. Someone he sentenced must have planned this revenge for months." I realized that Melissa had been working the room, planting theories about Dad's enemies, and ensuring that everyone saw her as collateral damage in an attack against our family's prominence. The most crushing moment came when James's mother took me aside during the chaos of trying to find a replacement dress. "Victoria, honey, maybe you should consider postponing the wedding," she said gently. "Not because of the dress, but because starting a marriage under these circumstances, with your family under attack and poor Melissa being framed, it might bring negative energy to your union." Negative energy? Well, someone clearly doesn't want this wedding to happen. Maybe the universe is sending a sign that you should wait until this settles down and your family finds peace again. James's mother had bought completely into the narrative that outside forces were trying to destroy our wedding, and now she was suggesting that maybe they were right to do so. As I stood in my childhood bedroom surrounded by concerned family members and friends, all of whom believed that my sister was an innocent victim of a criminal conspiracy, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. Melissa had successfully turned my wedding day into her moment of martyrdom, and she was basking in the attention while watching my dreams crumble.
The breaking point came when James pulled me aside 2 hours before the ceremony was supposed to begin. We stood in my father's study, surrounded by law books and the weight of a decision that would change everything. "Victoria, I need you to be completely honest with me," James said, his voice careful and measured. "Do you think there's any possibility that Melissa actually did this?" The question I'd been dreading hung in the air between us. My fiancé, the man who was supposed to marry me in 2 hours, was asking if I really believed my sister was capable of destroying my wedding dress. "James, I know how this looks. Because if you really think your own sister sabotaged our wedding," he continued, "then we have bigger problems than a ruined dress. We're talking about serious psychological issues, family dysfunction that could affect our marriage for years." I could see the doubt in his eyes, the careful distance he was maintaining. This was James the attorney, not James my fiancé, analyzing the situation with professional detachment. "Everyone else seems convinced that someone is targeting your family," he said. "Your parents, the guests, even the police officer who came to take the report. But you keep insisting it was Melissa, despite evidence that suggests the handwriting was forged. You think I'm wrong?" James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as stress. "I think you're traumatized and looking for someone to blame. Your sister has been nothing but supportive today. She's been crying, helping coordinate the search for a replacement dress, comforting guests. If she really destroyed your dress, she's either a sociopath or you're imagining things that aren't there." The words hit like physical blows. My own fiancé was suggesting I was either delusional or marrying into a family with a dangerous criminal. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding," James said quietly. "Not cancel it, just delay it until we can sort this out, until your family is stable again." "You want to postpone our wedding because you think I'm having a breakdown?" "I want to postpone our wedding because I don't know what to believe anymore. This morning, I thought I was marrying into a normal, loving family. Now I'm wondering if your sister is a sociopath or if my fiancé is having some kind of paranoid episode." The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. Melissa had succeeded in making my own fiancé question my sanity on our wedding day.
James, what if I could prove that Melissa did this? What if I could show you evidence that she's been lying? What kind of evidence? Because right now, all I see is a destroyed dress, a note that handwriting experts say was forged, and a security system that shows no break-in. Either there's a conspiracy against your family, or you're accusing an innocent person of a serious crime. I felt the walls closing in around me. Everyone I loved and trusted was looking at me like I was either a victim of circumstances or losing my grip on reality. No one was considering the possibility that Melissa was simply a master manipulator who had fooled them all. I need some time to think, I said. Victoria, the guests are arriving. The photographer is setting up. We need to make a decision. I know. James stepped closer, taking my hands in his. I love you, but I can't marry you today if there's any chance that you're... He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he was thinking. If there's any chance that you're mentally unstable. After James left to speak with his parents, I sat alone in my father's study, still in my robe, my wedding dress destroyed, my fiancé questioning my sanity, and my family convinced I was either a victim of circumstances or losing my grip on reality. Melissa had won completely. She'd destroyed my wedding day and my relationship while positioning herself as a sympathetic victim, deserving of comfort and protection. For the first time since finding the dress, I considered the possibility that maybe everyone was right. Maybe I should postpone the wedding, seek counseling, and figure out why I was so convinced my sister was capable of such cruelty. But then I remembered the look in Melissa's eyes when she thought no one was watching, the cold satisfaction of someone who had executed a perfect plan.
Sitting in my father's study, surrounded by legal precedents and constitutional law texts, something clicked. I was approaching this all wrong. Instead of defending myself against Melissa's lies, I needed to gather evidence like the lawyer I was trained to be. If Melissa thought she could manipulate a federal judge's family and get away with it, she'd underestimated what happened when you committed crimes against people who understood the legal system better than anyone. I started with what I knew for certain. Melissa had destroyed my dress, written that note, and was now covering it up with an elaborate performance. But to prove it, I needed to think like a prosecutor building a case, not like an emotional victim pleading for belief. First, I examined the note more carefully. While Dad had focused on the handwriting style, I looked at the paper itself. It was Melissa's personal stationery, the expensive cream-colored paper with her initials embossed at the top that she'd ordered from a boutique in Boston. Where would an outsider get access to her personal stationery? Second, I thought about timing. The dress was destroyed sometime between midnight when Melissa went downstairs and 7 a.m. when I discovered it. The security system showed no breaches, which meant whoever did this was already inside the house. Melissa was the only person who had been moving around the house during that time frame. Third, I considered motive. An enemy of Dad's would target him directly, not sabotage a family wedding. This was personal, aimed specifically at destroying my happiness on the most important day of my life. But I needed more than logic. I needed proof that would satisfy even Melissa's most devoted defenders. I remember that Melissa always documented everything on social media. She was obsessed with curating her online image, posting carefully staged photos of her life that made everything look perfect. If she'd been planning this for weeks, there might be digital evidence of her state of mind. I grabbed my laptop and started going through her Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. What I found made my blood run cold. For the past month, Melissa had been posting increasingly bitter content about, quote, people who get everything handed to them and fairy tale endings that some people don't deserve. The posts were subtle enough to seem like general observations, but knowing what I knew now, they read like a countdown to sabotage.
The most damning post was from 3 days ago. A photo of herself looking pensively out a window with the caption, "Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands when life isn't fair. Hashtag justice, hashtag balance the universe challenge, hashtag sisterhood." But I needed more than social media posts that could be interpreted as philosophical musings. Then I remembered Melissa's obsession with planning and control. She kept detailed journals, digital calendars, and to-do lists for everything. If she'd planned this destruction, she would have made notes about it somewhere. I knew she used the same passwords for everything, our childhood dog's name followed by her birth year. It took me less than 5 minutes to access her iCloud account from my laptop. What I found was a digital treasure trove of premeditation. In her Notes app, I discovered a folder titled V's Wedding that contained detailed observations about the dress, the schedule, and the security arrangements. There were notes about when everyone went to bed, which stairs creaked, and how long it would take to cut through the fabric without making noise. Most damning of all was an entry from 2 weeks ago. Quote, "The dress needs to be destroyed in a way that looks deliberate but can be blamed on outside enemies. Dad's judicial record gives us the perfect cover story. Frame it as retaliation from criminals he's sentenced." She had planned everything, down to the narrative about Dad's enemies and the forged handwriting defense. But the evidence that would seal her fate was in her deleted photos folder. Melissa had taken pictures of herself cutting the dress, probably as some kind of sick trophy collection. The photo showed her in our kitchen at 2:47 a.m. using fabric scissors to methodically destroy my wedding dress while smiling at the camera. She had documented her own crime, and she'd been too arrogant to permanently delete the evidence. I finally had everything I needed to prove Melissa's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt.
With Melissa's self-incriminating photo secured, I knew I needed more than just digital evidence. If I was going to expose her publicly and legally, I needed a comprehensive case that would satisfy both my father's judicial standards and convince everyone who had fallen for her performance. I started by documenting everything systematically. I took screenshots of all her social media posts, saved her digital planning notes, and backed up the photos to multiple cloud accounts. Then I began building a timeline that would prove premeditation beyond any reasonable doubt. My next step was gathering physical evidence that could corroborate the digital proof. I went to Melissa's guest room and found her travel bag. Inside, wrapped in a hotel towel, were the fabric scissors she'd used to destroy my dress. The blades still had threads from my wedding dress caught in them, ivory silk and Belgian lace that matched perfectly. But I needed more than just the weapon. I needed to prove that the handwriting analysis Dad had done was flawed or manipulated. I remembered that Melissa had been practicing different handwriting styles since college. She'd always been obsessed with calligraphy and had multiple notebooks where she'd experiment with different fonts and letter formations. If I could find examples of her deliberately altering her handwriting, it would prove she was capable of making the note look forged. In her room, I found exactly what I was looking for, a notebook filled with handwriting exercises where she'd practice writing the same phrases in different styles. One page was particularly damning. She'd written, "You don't deserve this happiness," in at least 5 different handwriting variations, including one that looked deliberately sloppy to appear forged. This wasn't just premeditation, it was rehearsal. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "We need to make a decision in the next hour. Guests are asking questions." I texted back, "Give me 30 more minutes. I'm gathering evidence that will change everything." But I still needed one more piece of proof, something that would demonstrate Melissa's capacity for long-term deception and manipulation. I needed to show this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern. I called my college roommate Sarah, who had stayed in touch with people from our social circle. "Sarah, I need you to think back to college. Did Melissa ever do anything that seemed off, manipulative, or deliberately hurtful?" "Victoria, what's going on? Shouldn't you be getting married right now? Please, just think, it's important." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Actually, now that you mention it, there was something junior year.
Remember when you were dating Michael Chen and suddenly he stopped calling you? I did remember. Michael and I had been getting serious when he abruptly ended things without explanation. I ran into Michael at a reunion last year, Sarah continued. He told me something weird. He said your sister had called him anonymously, claiming to be a friend, and told him you were cheating with multiple guys. She gave him specific details about times and places that seemed credible. My stomach dropped. She sabotaged my relationship in college too? That's not all. She also told him that you'd been saying negative things about his family, calling them social climbers and making racist comments. Michael was so hurt and disgusted that he decided to cut contact completely rather than confront you. The pattern was becoming clear. Melissa had been systematically destroying my life for years while playing the innocent party, while secretly orchestrating chaos in my life. Victoria, why are you asking about this now? Because she just did it again, but this time she went too far. I hung up and called my high school friend Jennifer, then my sorority sister Kate, then my law school study partner David. The same pattern emerged from every conversation: relationships that had ended mysteriously, friendships that had soured without explanation, opportunities that had disappeared due to anonymous tips about my character. Melissa had spent years undermining my life while playing the role of the supportive sister. Today's destruction of my wedding dress wasn't an isolated act of jealousy. It was the culmination of a decade-long campaign of sabotage. I now had everything I needed: digital evidence of premeditation, physical evidence of the crime, proof of her capacity for handwriting manipulation, and documentation of a pattern of behavior spanning years. It was time to present my case.
As I was compiling my evidence, my phone rang. It was my cousin Rebecca, calling from California, with news that would shatter everything I thought I knew about Melissa's motivations. Victoria, I just heard about the wedding dress incident from Aunt Patricia. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Thank you, Rebecca. It's been a nightmare. I have to tell you something, and I probably should have said this years ago, about Melissa. My heart stopped. What about her? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. 2 years ago, when I was going through my divorce, Melissa offered to let me stay with her in Boston while I got back on my feet. I was grateful at the time, but looking back, I think she had ulterior motives. What kind of motives? She was obsessed with you, Victoria. I mean obsessed. Her apartment was like a shrine to your achievements. Copies of your law school transcripts, photos of you and James, newspaper clippings about your father's court cases. She had a whole wall dedicated to tracking your life. My blood ran cold. She was stalking me? Worse than that. She had journals, Victoria, detailed journals about how to balance the scales between you two. She wrote about specific plans to undermine your career, your relationships, your reputation. She called it leveling the playing field. I felt sick. What did the journals say? She had a timeline of interventions. Breaking up your relationship with Michael in college was just the beginning. She sabotaged your summer internship at the DA's office by calling in anonymous complaints about your work ethic. She's the reason you didn't get that job at the law firm in Manhattan. She sent them fabricated information about your character references. Years of bad luck and missed opportunities suddenly made sense. Melissa hadn't just been competing with me, she'd been systematically destroying my life while positioning herself as my supportive sister. Rebecca, why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't have proof, and she was family. I thought maybe she was just working through some psychological issues and would eventually stop. But Victoria, she had plans for your wedding day. Detailed plans. My hands were shaking. What kind of plans? She wrote about how your wedding would be the perfect opportunity to finally show everyone that Victoria isn't as perfect as she pretends to be. She researched ways to destroy wedding dresses, practiced forging her own handwriting to make it look like someone else did it.
and even planned how to position herself as a victim of the same attack. Every word Rebecca spoke confirmed what I'd discovered. But hearing the scope of Melissa's planning was devastating. This wasn't just about today. This was about years of calculated psychological warfare. "There's more," Rebecca continued. She had backup plans in case the dress destruction didn't work. She was prepared to call in bomb threats to the venue, hire people to disrupt the ceremony, even stage her own kidnapping to ruin your wedding day. I was dealing with someone far more dangerous than I'd realized. "Victoria, I think she's been planning this specific attack for over a year. She has photos of your dress from when you went shopping, floor plans of your parents' house, schedules of everyone's routines. This isn't impulse or jealousy. This is premeditated psychological terrorism. Do you still have access to any of this evidence?" I took photos of some of the journal pages before I left Boston. I was scared of what she might do, but I wasn't sure who to tell. I'll send them to you right now. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with image after image of Melissa's handwritten plans, pages and pages of meticulous scheming that went back years, detailed psychological profiles of our family members, manipulation strategies, and specific plans for destroying my wedding day. The most chilling entry was dated 6 months ago. "Victoria thinks she's won by finding the perfect dress and planning the perfect wedding. She has no idea that her perfect day will become her worst nightmare. After today, everyone will see her as the unstable, paranoid sister who falsely accused her loving family member. James will leave her, Dad will question her judgment, and I'll finally get the respect and attention I deserve." Melissa hadn't just wanted to ruin my wedding. She'd wanted to destroy my entire life and steal my identity as the successful, beloved daughter. I was looking at evidence of a decade-long campaign of psychological warfare, more sophisticated and malicious than anything I'd imagined possible.
I gathered all my evidence, digital files, physical proof, witness statements, and Rebecca's photos, and walked downstairs to where my family and James were waiting in the living room. Melissa was holding court in the center of the room, still playing the role of grieving sister to perfection. "Everyone, I need you to see something," I announced, setting my laptop on the coffee table. Melissa's expression flickered for just a moment before she composed herself. "Victoria, honey, you should be getting ready. We can figure out the dress situation." The dress situation is already figured out, because I know exactly who destroyed it. I opened my laptop and projected the first image onto our smart TV. Melissa's selfie from 2:47 a.m., smiling as she cut my wedding dress in half. The silence in the room was deafening. This photo was taken from Melissa's phone at 2:47 a.m. this morning in our kitchen. She documented her own crime. Melissa's face had gone white, but she rallied quickly. "That's not real. Someone hacked my phone, photoshopped my face." "Here's the metadata," I continued, displaying the technical information: location, timestamp, device information, all traceable to your iPhone. Dad, in his judicial robes, leaned forward with the expression he used when examining evidence in court. "Melissa, how do you explain this?" "I can't explain it because it's not real. Victoria must have created this somehow. She's been acting paranoid all morning." I clicked to the next slide. Pages from Melissa's journals that Rebecca had photographed. "These are from your apartment in Boston. Your detailed plans to destroy my wedding day, written in your handwriting in your journal." James read aloud from the screen. "Victoria thinks she's won by finding the perfect dress and planning the perfect wedding. She has no idea that her perfect day will become her worst nightmare." He looked up at Melissa with disgust. "You wrote this 6 months ago." "That's not my handwriting," Melissa insisted, but her voice was shaking now. I displayed the next evidence:
her practice notebook with multiple variations of "you don't deserve this happiness." Actually, it is your handwriting. Here's where you practiced writing the note in different styles to make it look forged. I pointed to the screen. You even practiced making it look like wrong so Dad would think someone was trying to frame you. Mom gasped audibly. Melissa, you practiced this? The walls were closing in around Melissa, but she made one last desperate attempt. This is all fabricated. Victoria is having some kind of breakdown and she's created all this fake evidence to blame me. Dad's voice cut through her protests like a blade. Melissa, I've been a federal judge for 15 years. I know real evidence when I see it. He stood up, his judicial authority filling the room. The metadata on these photos is genuine. The handwriting analysis will confirm these are your journals. And, most importantly, the fabric scissors in your travel bag still have threads from Victoria's dress on them. Melissa's face crumpled as she realized her performance was over. You went through my things? You committed a felony, Dad said coldly. Destruction of property, criminal mischief, and harassment. In my jurisdiction, those charges carry serious penalties. Dad, please, Melissa whispered, finally dropping the act. The time for explanations was before you decided to commit crimes against your sister and lie to a federal law enforcement officers. Dad's voice carried the weight of his position. James, I need you to call the FBI field office. Ask for Agent Martinez. The FBI? Melissa's voice cracked. This crosses state lines. You planned this in Massachusetts and executed it in Connecticut. That makes it federal jurisdiction. You researched federal crimes, committed those crimes, and then attempted to cover them up by lying to federal law enforcement officers. Dad, I'm your daughter. And Victoria is my daughter too. The daughter whose life you've been systematically trying to destroy for over a decade. His voice was ice cold. I've seen your journals, Melissa. The sabotaged job applications, the destroyed relationships, the character assassination campaigns. This isn't just about a wedding dress. This is about a pattern of criminal behavior. James was already on the phone with the FBI. Mom sat in stunned silence, staring at her older daughter as if seeing her for the first time. Please, Melissa begged, tears streaming down her face. I'll get help. I'll pay for the dress. I'll apologize to everyone. You'll have the opportunity to express remorse to the court, Dad said, after you're properly charged and processed through the legal system. Within 30 minutes, FBI agent Martinez arrived with a warrant for Melissa's arrest on federal charges of interstate criminal mischief, harassment, and fraud. As they led her away in handcuffs, Melissa looked back at me with pure hatred. You always get everything you want. No, I said quietly. I just refused to let you take it away anymore.
6 months later, I stood in the same country club ballroom where my original wedding was supposed to take place, wearing an even more beautiful dress that James and I had chosen together. Melissa was serving 18 months in federal prison for interstate criminal harassment and fraud, with mandatory psychological counseling. But the most meaningful change wasn't in Melissa's punishment. It was in the letter I held from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI had offered me a position as a federal prosecutor specializing in cybercrime and psychological harassment cases. My experience with Melissa's systematic manipulation had given me unique insights into digital stalking and family-based criminal enterprises. What she'd meant to destroy had actually created new purpose in my life. You know what I keep thinking about? James said as we danced to our first song as husband and wife. How you refused to let her win. How you fought back with evidence instead of just emotion. She taught me something valuable, I admitted. Sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the greatest betrayal. But that doesn't mean we should stop trusting. It means we should trust wisely.
My father, who had officiated our ceremony with visible pride, approached us during the reception. "Victoria, I owe you an apology. My judicial training should have made me more skeptical of Melissa's story from the beginning. Dad, she fooled everyone. That was her skill. But you didn't stay fooled. You investigated, gathered evidence, and built a case that would hold up in any court." He smiled. "You're going to make an exceptional federal prosecutor." As I looked around the reception, at friends who now understood how they'd been manipulated, at family members who'd learned to question surface appearances, at a husband who'd seen me at my strongest when I should have been at my most vulnerable, I realized something important. Melissa had tried to destroy my perfect day, to steal my perfect life. Instead, she'd forced me to discover just how strong I could be when everything I loved was threatened. She'd meant to break me, but she'd actually revealed that I was unbreakable. Sometimes the greatest attacks come from within our own families, but sometimes surviving those attacks shows us exactly who we're meant to become.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.